here at Telford at the show, and that's when really the Drumlanrig Grand National was launched. Now that was just back in February, and look at what they've achieved over the last sort of 4 or 5 months. I've got to thank a few people. Now I can't mention everybody, it would be unfair to try and pinpoint everybody, and maybe selecting a few is maybe a bad thing, but I'd like to thank Derek Falls here down the front for all his publicity. Kenny Harper in the middle here, thank you Kenny. John Fleming, of course, one of the drivers of this big event. Geordie Crichton, and of course the man that's been really involved in the sport at this level now. He's been pushing for this for the last couple of years. He's had vision and he's put a lot into this, not just financially but heart and soul, and that's Fraser Dykes of AMD Contract Services. Now, having been associated with the Scottish ACU some years ago when the motocross broke away into the MC Federation, it was quite sad to see that happen. But I'm glad to see that there's been postings on Facebook this week of young Billy Edwards, or maybe not so young now, holding the famous Donald Sinclair Trophy. And tomorrow night, round about, I think it's about 7 o'clock, we'll be having a get-together of former champions here, so I hope you'll all come back for that. I'll be helping hosting that. I think Vic Allen's got to be in attendance. I don't know if Vic's here tonight or not. But it's been a great show so far. It was great grass track racing today, and this is an absolutely brilliant thing for Scottish scrambling, Scottish motocross, whatever you want to call it, to have everybody here at Drumlanrig, and I hope it happens for many years to come. So thank you very much for all coming in tonight. Now I'm going to attempt to get up on the stage now, and hopefully without falling. Just to start an introduction, our guest of honour was born in Berkeley, California, USA in 1953. In fact, he celebrated his 65th birthday just 5 days ago on the 8th of July. He took up motocross racing at the age of 13. He won the 1972 AMA Motocross National Championship, partly on a CZ, and during the second half of the season on a Kawasaki. He rode professionally for CZ, Kawasaki, Husqvarna, Honda and finally Suzuki, upon which he won the 1982 World Motocross Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest of honour at the 2018 Drumlanrig Grand National of Scotland, Mr. Brad Lackey. I've just realised there's steps round here. Now, have a seat, Brad. We're just going to have a chat this evening. We've only got one microphone, but that shouldn't be a bad thing, because I'll just hand it over to you, because they're not wanting to listen to me tonight, they're wanting to listen to you. Now, Brad, you were picked to ride for CZ in Europe back in the early 70s. You were 19 at the time, I believe. Tell us about your early CZ days. Let's kick it off right at the beginning.
Well, actually I rode CZ for a while, but I was in New York at a Trans Am race. That's when all the Europeans would come to America and would race us Americans and teach us how to ride motorcycles. And I had a very good start at this race. I was riding with all the top Europeans, and I led the race for 20 minutes, and then my CZ, I fell down in practice on a nice wet grass track just like this. That's the way the track was, and I fell down a couple times and my shifter got kind of stripped out. So, and we had no parts and no help. So halfway through the race I was leading, and then my shifter was not shifting, it was just spinning on the shaft. And I knew that I was going to get caught and pass because I couldn't shift the gears. So I decided, well, I'm not going to let it look like I got tired and they caught me and beat me. I'm just going to go down, they call it gravity cavity, this big hill, and it jumps out. I'm just going to ghost ride the bike out of there and let it crash, and I'll walk back to the pits and cry in my beer, you know. That's what I did. And then the CZ people came over to me and they went, "What are you doing? What's the matter?" I go, "The stupid shifting thing," and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so they said, "Hey, would you like to go to Europe and ride some Grand Prix in the summer?" And I was finished with school. It was kind of mid-time. I forget when it was. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, we'll give you a factory CZ bike. You can go to Europe and ride 250 Grand Prix." And I went, "Oh, yeah, that kind of sounds okay." And so I had to call home and I asked my dad. I said, I have an offer to go to Europe and ride GPs on a factory bike, or I could come home and finish school. What do you think I should do? And there was some silence on the phone for a little bit of time, and then he said, well, you can always finish school. And I said, you're the smartest guy I know.
Excellent. Now, obviously, I said that partway through the 1972 series, you moved from what you call CZ, but we call CZ, to Kawasaki. Now, Kawasaki were keen to increase their market share of sales in the United States on off-road bikes. You jumped ship mid-season 72. Was that a better deal for you? And tell me how Kawasaki approached you.
Actually, it was kind of a strange deal. Kawasaki only had a 500 prototype bike at the time, and I was riding CZs in the 250 and 500 classes and nationals and stuff around the United States. And I started test riding for them, or developing for them, and they wanted to give me a contract to ride the series, the Trans Am and the National Series in the States. But they only had a 500, and at that time you could ride 250 class and 500 class. So I continued to race my CZ in the 250 class and rode the Kawasaki in the 500 class. So I actually had a factory contract with both factories at the same time. So I took all the money. And yeah, well, you know. Anyway, so then the CZ thing, you know, kind of was over, and Kawasaki hired me full time in second half of 72, like I said, and then I won the national championship on Kawasaki in 72 after learning from my experience in 71 in Checo with the CZs and stuff in the Grand Prix. And then I put a clause in my contract with Kawasaki: if I won the national championship for you, which that was the first Japanese national championship in America, so they were very excited about that. I said if I win, I can decide if I want to go to Europe and ride Grand Prix or stay in the States. And so they signed that, not thinking I would probably win. But then when I did win, I said, well, we're going to Europe next year. And they said, what? No, you're going to stay here and ride that #1 plate all year long, so we sell some of these bikes. And I said, well, no, I want to go to Europe. And so I went to Europe. They didn't help me much, and that was my final year in Kawasaki the first time. And I saw that Husqvarna and with Heikki McCullough and all the guys were pretty serious about the Grand Prix, so I worked a deal with them, and I rode for Husky after that for 3 years in the Grand Prix circuit. Kind of got my bones there doing that.
Which brings us nicely into question 3. You switched from Kawasaki to the Swedish Husqvarna brand in 1974. With the Husky, which was a very popular bike at that time. I mean, in Scotland they were racing Husqvarnas and were doing very well at levels with our Norrie Limburn and Peter Reid. I believe you had chain problems with the Husqvarna. Did the chain keep derailing on your bike or not on anybody else's? Was that the point?
Well, you know, there's riding styles. All you riders out there, you know, you don't ride like your buddy. You know, you ride different weight. You know, if you weigh if you're 6 foot tall and weigh 200 pounds and you're another guy like Gaston Ryer, you know, you don't ride the same way, and the bikes are different. You need to set them up different, and things are different. So anyway, Heikki, he had a riding style that fit the Husky better than mine, I would say. And I rode way more on the back of the bike and flexed the bike more, and my chain would fall off, and his wouldn't. And he would win the Grand Prix, and I'd get 5th or 6th or 10th or whatever I got. So the engineers, you know, they went, well, we don't know what the problem is. I said, well, I know what the problem is. He said, yeah, but you're not an engineer. I said, well, you don't have to be one to know what the problem is. The swing arm is flexing and the chain's falling off. Well, Heikki's doesn't fall off. Of course it doesn't. He doesn't ride the same way I ride. So anyway, they wouldn't believe me, and so they took Heikki's mechanic, because then they blamed it on my mechanic. They took Heikki's mechanic and said, we'll have Heikki's mechanic fix your chain and set up your bike and it won't fall off. I said, okay, go ahead. And then I'd go out on the practice track, I'd say, where do you want the chain to fall off? And I thought I was joking. I said, okay, go over to that jump, watch, chain falls off. And then they go, damn it, not the mechanic, what could it be? You know, after 10 of these things, you know, the Swedes have this, you know, hard head mentality, they call it, I forget what they call it. But anyway, so after a while, it was kind of known that I was hard to work with. But I was actually trying to keep the chain on my bike is all I was doing. So anyway, eventually never came to terms on that. I built my own swing arm, and anyway, that all didn't work out. So by then I went to Honda.
Excellent. Now, just sticking a little while on the Husqvarna, something I just thought of. In the film On Any Sunday Too, you talked a little bit in that film about Bengt Aberg. Was he somebody that you looked up to when you were coming up through the ranks? I mean, he obviously had won the 500cc 3 times, I think it was. And you said in the film that he had his FIM medals hanging up in his barn as if they were just nothing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I was with Husky, we'd go to training camps in northern Sweden, you know, made northern Scotland look like a paradise. It was kind of cold up there. And we would train up there for January, February or so, get ready for the Grand Prix. And then I had a chance to go to Bengt's house and look at some of his stuff and just hang out with him. Him and Arnie Crane, they were my heroes because they were the Husky guys from the earlier time. You know, Heidi was obviously the world champ at that time, but they were also Huskies and won championships. So, and I went to his house and he just had his 2 gold medals that he won the championship on just above the fireplace in the den or something. And I'm walking along and I'm just looking and going, thinking, boy, if I ever had one of those, I wanted to put it there, you know. So anyway, it really stood out in my mind how a big deal it wasn't to them, and what a big deal it was to me if I ever won one. And it just kind of made something stick in my mind. And then, long time after that, after I retired, there's a 4 or 5 time world superbike champion that came out of the area where I live, Freddie Merkel, and we went and visited him in Taupo, New Zealand, sorry. And went to his house, and he had this old beat-up old garage outside with no doors on it, and his bike sitting there, dust everywhere, and all his trophies and his world championship medals were laying in dirt, and he didn't even care about them. And that made me think back to the Alberg story, and I went, well, at least he had his in the house, and they were clean. This guy doesn't even care whatsoever. Mine is all pristine like a little Mona Lisa, you know? But that's because I got one and they have more than one.
But with all due respect, Brad, how many 500cc world champions are in this room just now? There is only one, I believe, is that right? Or is there 2? Is there 2?
Graham's in the pub.
Oh, he's in the pub. Oh well, he's not here at the moment. But yeah, to achieve that is a monumental thing, really. I think that's true, isn't it?
Yep.
Now, back came Kawasaki, I believe, in 1979. Before that year's Grand Prix series, your bike wasn't too good. So Kawasaki paid for you and your mechanic to fly to Kawasaki Racing Development to resolve the matter, which resulted in a new bike being made in a short time. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, actually, they didn't pay. They didn't know we were coming. I had this nice little gold thing called an American Express card, and the bikes were not ready, and the Grand Prix was coming really soon, and I was promised a lot of stuff that didn't happen, so I threw that card up there, and Steve and I, my mechanic, we flew from Europe. At that time, you can't fly over Russia, so you have to fly from Europe to Alaska and get some more gas, and then go to Japan. So it was, a long trip, and we didn't tell them we were coming. We just showed up at the factory, took a cab from the airport, and went to the factory and walked in there, and they were going, "You guys are supposed to be in Europe racing," We're standing there in front of them, and I said, "Hey, we got to do some changes, it's now or never." And the head guy at the R&D place, the race department, wasn't there. He was someplace else, so we told somebody to go get him, and you really want me to tell the picture story? My wife is here, she'll get embarrassed. Anyway, so while we're waiting for him to come back, I'm sitting at this desk with my feet up on his desk. This isn't like a interior office, it's the race shop desk, it's out in the workshop area. Anyway, I'm sitting there and we're waiting, and I look on his desk and he's got this picture of my wife at a race, kind of kind of a nice picture of my wife at the race, standing around watching me ride or watching the race, and I'm going, what the hell? Anyway, so the guy finally gets there, and we're ready to yell and scream at him about we need 3 frames, we get some hacksaws, give us a motor, some cylinders, some porting tools, all this stuff so we can build a bike within, a day. And before I could even get to that, I go, what is this? You ever see a yellow guy turn red? That's hard to do. And he couldn't say a word, and I just went, don't say anything? 3 frames, 2 motors, here in 10 minutes. And we got it. We built a new bike right then. We went to the first GP. The bike got there Saturday before the GP, through customs or something. We made it just in time, and we won a moto. I don't know if I won overall. I think Graham might have won the overall, but we both won a moto, and we had a bike that could win a race.
You let him keep the
That's cool.
picture. Right.
Oh, did you? Yeah, that was very sporting of you.
I didn't get what I wanted. No, he wasn't going to get the picture, but I did.
Excellent. Now, the Kawasaki, the Unitrack suspension, did it have a tendency to break a lot? Was it something that was a faulty suspension system?
No, the suspension was actually okay. There was some issues with the rates of the springs and some other things that needed a lot of work. But the frame would break more than anything with the suspension, because the frame wasn't exactly built right to handle that type of suspension. They took a regular frame from before and then built the suspension on it, and then they didn't realize the stress in other areas, and so we had some frame problems. But getting the spring right and the leverage right on the thing was the hard part. But and that year I won more GPs than everybody, but it broke down more, so I didn't win the championship. But when we had it working, but it just wasn't good enough to finish races.
I think there's a gentleman here today, I don't know if he's in the room just now, but he actually managed to break a 500 Kawasaki in half. Billy Edwards, are you here, Billy? Is he here? Yeah, and there's a famous picture of Billy sort of looking down at this Unitrack Kawasaki with the front end lying at one place and the back end at another. So Billy Edwards, former Scottish champion as well, also had problems with Kawasaki, right, Bill?
We used to race that thing in the series in America and the Supercross. They had a 500 Supercross in the early times, and Weinert, he broke his in half at one of the Supercrosses, and the front end, it came completely apart. The front end went one way and the bike was over there. So, Weinert, he didn't get hurt, but then he's trying to get it together and stuff, and some people out of the stands came down and grabbed the front end, and they were stealing and dragging it back up into the stands.
Excellent. Now, race mechanics, you must have had a few in your time. Did you have a favourite mechanic when you raced as a professional motocrosser?
Oh, that's a good one. Every mechanic's just like a rider. They're all different, and I've had ones that are pretty smart in some areas, and some are pretty dumb in other areas, and some are very talented in getting you motivated, and that's very important in our sport, and I think at this point I've run the gauntlet with those kind of guys, and when you mix them all together, I really don't have a favorite. They all had a little something that helped me, and I appreciate that. But in the end, I don't have anybody that I would still call a really great friend, and you would think you would, but I don't have that with them. Because a lot of the mechanics at that time were really out for themselves too, to get a name and stuff, so they weren't really maybe on your team. They were doing it for money and other reasons too, so it's a little complicated there. But I think if I had to pick a favorite, I'd say Stig Peterson, Ole Peterson's brother, Swedish guy, and he worked with us with the Kawasaki's and the Suzuki's, and he was the most honest guy out of the whole group, and he's a good guy.
Now, we touched on it earlier on when we talked about Bengt Aberg, but who was the motocross rider that most inspired you? I'm thinking more from the early days when you first took up the sport, when you were riding with your brother and your father.
Well, when the Europeans first came to my part of town in Northern California, it was the Interams very early, 67, 68 or so, '69, and of course Joel, he was the showman. He would come to the race, and that was his hand on the head start time, you know, and no rubber band, no gate, and the flag guy would go like that, and Joel would kick that CZ into gear and wheelie, and then he'd shift all 4 gears before he'd even take his hand off his head, and then grab the front end and put it down in the first turn and get the whole shot. As a little kid, how are you not gonna go, dude, you are the man? So, you know, watching Joel, and then he had all his other little tricks up his sleeve. He would do all kinds of fun things and pretend he's drinking a lot before the races and really not. And man, he was just, when he came to America, he kind of cut loose, and he really made it look fun. And that made everybody want to do it.
That sounds fine to me, Brad. Now, obviously, you and your wife, Laurie, have been together a very long time. I believe you were high school sweethearts, I'm led to believe. How did you meet her, and was she a motocross fan to start with?
My parents moved from one town to the other, so I was going to a new school, so I knew nobody, and I saw her in school, and then it ended up we lived about 4 houses apart, which I didn't know at the time. And obviously, if you see her now, you'll know why I liked her, or still do. And she didn't know anything. I was racing, obviously, but she was 15, I was 16 about that time, I guess. And we just kind of saw each other at school, and I was the new guy, and that was maybe exciting to her, and she was the most beautiful girl in the school, so that was exciting to me. And we found out that we were almost neighbors when I would see her mom take her to school sometimes, and I went, oh, she lives right there, you know. And she didn't know about me racing, and at that time, you know, motorcycles were not that popular, you know, because there was Hell's Angels stuff and that stuff going on in the States. So I kind of kept it quiet. I didn't let her know I raced motorcycles or had motorcycles, and I would be gone on the weekends, and I'd come back, and sometimes I'd have a broken this or a broken that, and I'd say we're out on the farm with my uncle or something. I'd make up all these lousy excuses. And she bought it, which she probably knew better. But so anyway, I kind of hid it for a while because I wanted to get in good with her parents, and I didn't want them to think that I was some crazy motorcycle guy. So that, I don't know how long that lasted. Not too long, but then after a while, it was obvious that you know, I was riding motorcycles or racing them, and then at that time, I already sucked my way in, and they liked me, so that was good.
Well done. And how long have you been together now?
Oh, I think we just had an anniversary last month of 30. What is it? Hang on. Give me 5 more years and it's 50. All right, no, 6 more years and it's 50. Well, we got married, but we were together for 5 years. So you got to realize that there's some, you know, what are you talking about here? The real number, the paper number? Yeah.
Sounds like 50. Round of applause for a very long-standing relationship here, everybody. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Now, obviously, we all know that you were 1982 World 500cc motocross champion, and that was on a Suzuki. Tell us about the bike itself, what it was like to ride, and what was it consisting of? What was the components that made that a winning machine for you?
Well, the 82 bike was kind of a hybrid of what we built, learning from getting on Suzuki in 81. When I got an 81 Suzuki, when I got my contract with them, they hadn't been in the 500 class since Roger's day of 75 or 76, so they were far behind Honda and everybody else. And of course they didn't realize that. They thought they were right up there with all of them. Anyway, so we had to do a lot of changes for that 82 bike. The 82 bike looked very similar to that. I started out, normally we'd go to Europe and race from January on, all the international races until the GP started in April. And this year we didn't. We stayed in California, and I rode a California series and did all my testing in California where the weather was good instead of frozen tundra in Belgium. And we developed those forks, those Simon forks, those upside down forks. Those were the first forks that were ever made that way. And he's from a genius that lives in Northern California, close by me, named Steve Simons. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Rock Shocks, but that's his company too, and he built all these Simons motorcycle products also. And we did a lot of testing on those. We knew they were solid. We knew we could ride the GPs with them and have an advantage on giant jumps and on getting out of mud ruts. There's no flex. I mean, all kinds of things that helped you out when you're really racing. And the bike, the motor itself, I had Stig, that I mentioned earlier, and another mechanic that he was a good motor guy, or he knew people that were. And I built my motor completely different than the factory motor. They had a pretty revvy, smaller engine, and I made my pistons bigger, and I had a more torquey one. That's my riding style. And we just changed the motor and the pipes and stuff to fit my style, and changed it from a 5-speed to a 4-speed. Because I started in 3rd gear on that bike at every GP and shifted to 4th on the straightaways. I could have had a 2-speed, So it was a grunt motor, and that's the kind of style I liked. And the bike worked out great. We had the championship won just about halfway through by a mile, and then I broke a shock in half in Canada and lost 25 points there, which was coming into the end of the season with 4 races left: England, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Holland or something. So we kind of got a little nervous there, because that 25 points with that broken DNF kind of cost us a lot of points. And then we were coming back to Belgium and Luxembourg, which is Roman's hometown. That's my teammate that I was racing against for the championship that year, and he was on fire right about then too. He was doing really well. And so the bike was a year-long progression from 81 until we started in the beginning of 82, but we didn't change the bike from the first GP really, other than tires at certain tracks, carburation, and nothing else. But it stayed just like it was the way we came into the season. We knew it would work, and it did work.
Now, staying with the 1982 season, which was the pinnacle of your racing career, there's no doubt about that. It was a 10-year journey for you to win the World 500cc Championship. What sort of tactics did you use, with your own tactics combined with any trainers or people that were with Suzuki? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, we did a lot of math on the situation, actually. We looked at all the past champions and the points. How many points it took to win the 500 World Championship. 250 and 125, totally different deals, but 500, typically the guys are older, wiser, and consistent, and the factories spend more money on the bikes, so they break less. And, if you have, like I just said, that one DNF, one moto was almost the tipping point of the scale to lose the championship. I mean, when you got 24 races and you can't not finish one of them, you got to finish every one in the top 3, 4, or win second or third. That's all you got to do to win a world championship. But it sounds a little easier than it is. So you gotta on your worst day, when everything's wrong, the bike's wrong, the shock is blown up, you still have to get 5th or something in the race. So there's a lot of problems you work through. But we knew that if you could consistently get in the top 5 and win the races you could, and always be second or third, which that's basically what we were, then the points would show in the end that you will win, by points. To history, that's how many points it would take. And we knew the point thing. And so we had that going. I don't know if anybody else looked at it that way in the championship. And then we also, my trainer, he had lap times of every rider, every lap at every GP, every moto, and we had a chart. And you could see that this rider, after 25 minutes, the race is 45 minutes or 50 minutes long, however long it was, depending on the track, he would start to fade and lose 2-3 seconds a lap, and this guy would stay flat, that guy would gain some, and so you knew what was going to happen. So you'd come into, say, the last part of a moto and show me who's in front of me. I already know that he's losing 5 seconds a lap, or he's going to stay the same, or he's going to be gaining some time. So that gave you an idea of what you need to do. Where the other guys, they didn't know that. They had no idea about that. So I was in probably better shape than everybody else. So I knew that I could go faster at the end of every race. The rougher the track got, the slower everybody gets and the more tired they are. But I could go faster because the track gets, like this track, it's going to get, once the berms get going and all that grass gets in the right spot, you're going to be able to go 5 seconds a lot faster than you did in practice here after the second moto, you know? And that's what you have to learn. And if you learn that, then that comes to your advantage. And we took advantage of that. So we knew the times, and I knew that I could make up at the last race in Luxembourg. I was actually 25 seconds behind Romans with 5 laps to go, and I caught him and passed him. So, you know, you got to know the numbers.
I think that tells us something about Brad Lackey and his preparation. I mean, as I said, it was a 10-year journey, really, from 72 to 82 to get the 500cc World Motocross Championship. There's a gentleman here this evening who has taken a lot of pictures over the years for a periodical we have here called Trials and Motocross News, and he's got a question for you. And we want to know if it's myth or if it's fact. At the final round at Luxembourg, did you play at full blast in your truck the Eye of the Tiger before you went out to race or not?
I had that tape in my motorhome, and yes, I did play it. No. But I didn't have outside speakers, and I probably played it inside with the doors and windows closed, but somebody could have heard it, I guess. But I had some other music too.
Thank you very much. And that question came from Graham Milne. Where are you, Graham? You're over here. He wanted to know that. That was one of the questions he put to me.
All you have to do is listen to the lyrics, and come on, that's motivation song.
Excellent. So that's that put to bed, Graham. Thanks very much. Now, obviously, when you raced for Suzuki, with your final year at top level motocross racing as a professional rider, 1982, what made you quit? Was it the fact that you wanted to go out at the top, or was there other reasons beside that, or was it a combination of many? Tell us about that, Brad.
It was quite a few things. My contract with Suzuki was for 81 and 82, and it was over in 82. And at that time, there was a big downturn in the economy. All the factories started bailing, you know, cutting back on everything. Kawasaki had only Thorpe out of England. Carlquist was out of Holland, just at the distributor. Honda had still a good team, but Suzuki bailed and quit because they just won the 125 and 500 World Championship and won the Manufacturers Championship in both those classes, and kind of went like that to Honda. So they were happy. So there wasn't a lot of, all the Japanese companies, there was no ride left, you know, there was nothing there, and the money wasn't there, so they weren't interested in spending a lot of money going racing in the 500 class anyway. And so I kind of made the decision that, you know, at that time, I think I was the first guy to quit on top and not continue the following year. I think that was the first year, 83, that the 500 plate was not out there from the champ. I mean, I wasn't trying to do that, but with those circumstances, and I already been there 10 years, I had some injuries, I got away with a couple good ones, you know, and I told my wife, I said, you know, unless I get $1 million, I'm not going to ride. And she goes, well, you're an idiot, you're not going to get $1 million. I said, that's perfectly why I said $1 million. And I was the highest paid guy prior to that, and I got like $250,000 was my base contract. And so anyway, I came home one day and I said, hey, I got an offer. She goes, yeah, how much? I go, $750,000. She goes, that's not $1 million. And I said, you're right, and I didn't take it and went home.
I think it tells you something when a top-class sportsman quits at the top, because unfortunately we all know that when you're at the top there's only one direction, and that's down. Now, we missed out one major manufacturer, the biggest manufacturer of motorcycles in the world, probably, Honda. Tell us about your time with Honda, and tell us something about your time when you were racing with Britain's Graham Noyes.
Honda and I didn't really mesh because they were more, like I said, with the engineers, and what they did was they hired the engineers and they got their team together and they built a bike, which was a damn good bike. And then they said, everybody has to ride the same bike. And like I said, Gaston and Mallard, they can't ride the same bike. You got to change it for the rider. And at that time, they weren't listening about that, and so we had some little difficulties about that because I wanted to change things and they didn't want anything to change. And I wasn't used to that. I'm used to kind of having my own way, so we didn't get along real good about that stuff. And when Graham came along, he was young, and he'd been riding a Mako, and the Mako was a great bike, great handling bike and stuff. But there was freedom with that Mako company that if I'm winning the race and you say you want something, they'll give you what you want, but they won't change that bike either because they're Germans. They're not going to change much. They're going to give you the parts you want and stuff, but they're not going to let you re-engineer the Mako, and Honda's the same way. And so Graham was kind of used to that, where I wasn't used to it. And so he got along a little bit better than I did. And like I said, I had a bad year with that Kawasaki breaking down, and that was a great year for Graham, and a different year, but still, when we were teammates, we got along great. We trained together, we raced together, we hung out together, we had fun together, we went to Jersey together, we did all kinds of things, and he's still a good friend. I hope to see him this weekend.
Well done, yeah. Now, obviously, we're sitting here, and I'm actually blown away because I used to read about you in America, and obviously racing in Europe, all over the world, in Dirt Bike magazine. You wrote a book, and I think David Lawson, that's the knee-out kid, I think he won an award early this morning. There he is down there. David Lawson has got a copy of your book that you wrote with Len Weed to get signed this weekend. That right, David? He's got it with him. Tell us about how you got involved with Len Weed, the Dirt Bike magazine, to write the book. I know that Bernie Schreiber did a similar one, but you've done one on motocross. Tell us about the makings of that book.
Yeah, Len was kind of a friend because he's a journalist guy, and we didn't live close by, but we did some stuff together, articles and stuff. And then he did Bernie's book, and then he did the Democus book, and I don't remember which. I think Bernie's was first, maybe Democus before me. I don't remember exactly at the time. But he came to me and said, hey, we should do something. And I said, yeah, and that was before I won the championship. And it was just because I had a lot of training. I had a trainer before any of the guys had trainers, so I was kind of into that a little bit more, and my trainer was a nutrition guy, and so that could be a good part of the book, and he understood that. So, and then he knew that I could give him all the other stuff, the other aspects, the tips and the writing stuff, and so it just kind of came together that we decided it would work. And then after I won the championship, we didn't change the book. All we did was change the cover of the book and put a more modern picture on it. But everything in there, if you actually did get that book, and it's got history of the sport, it's got all the stats from all the GPs and all the American races. I mean, I call it the Bible. Anytime you're with somebody and somebody's telling you, no, that guy won that time, and no, that guy, you just go, if you have that book, you can win the bet in the pub and get the free beer every time. It's got all the info, and it's facts. There's not a wrong fact in it as far as stats that I can ever come up with. So if you could find one, it's a good thing to take it to the pub, read it on the side, and then make a bet with your buddy what year this guy did that, and you'll win every time because you get to go to the book and go, look, see.
Brilliant. Now, obviously, we're here at Drumlanrig. It's a great venue. I think you've had a good look round so far, and you're very impressed. Tell us, how did you actually get here? How did it come about that the Galloway Club, which has only been formed this year, or reformed this year, because it's a very long history club. There's been some Scottish champions come out of Galloway. Peter Reid got a name one. You'll be here tomorrow night. Tell us how you got involved and how did you get invited to come across to Drumlanrig?
Well, I was really lucky because Wooly and some of the guys came over to the States for one of our the biggest race, the biggest vintage race we have in Texas called Diamond Dawns. And he has Friday cross country, Saturday vintage, Sunday post vintage, and fireworks and free food and free booze and free everything, and just all kinds of cannons going off. He's got everything happening out there. Alligators. I mean, he's got it all. And they all came over for that race, and I met them all there and got to bring some of the guys came to my house, and I got to show them my bike collection on the way, because there was a race in Texas and then a race in Northern California close to me, so they had to kind of come to my area. So I got to meet a lot of the guys from the club and stuff, and they told me about the castle race, and I go, nah, you can't have a race at a castle, come on. Oh, we did. I go, show me pictures. Nobody really had any pictures. They didn't have them on their phone. I said, yeah, that sounds good. No, really. So anyway, as it goes, I see more stuff, and I'm going, man, you guys pulled it off. You took the Duke's Castle and had a race. That's got to be cool. So they go, would you like to go? I said, hell yeah, I want to go. So, you know, we kind of put it together, and Fraser Dykes, he's the guy. He sponsored everybody and got us over here, and it's a beautiful setup, boy. You guys don't know how good you got it. You better have fun. You better have some fun tomorrow and Sunday. This is hard to come by.
Yeah, well, if we can impress the 1982 World 500cc motocross champion, I think, guys, you can take a pat in the back. That was one person I did leave out, was Willie Brown. He's put an awful lot of work into this, so thank you very much, Willie. Where are you? I saw the other. Great guy, and he had, like the rest of the guys in the Galloway Club, he had vision, and he stuck with the idea, and it's all happened. They're affiliated to Scottish ACU, which is the governing body in Scotland, one of the governing bodies within the country, and they've pulled off a really great thing. And if Brad Lackey is really impressed with the castle, I'm sure the public will be tomorrow as well.
I think the biggest problem is, like Willie said, in 2 years you guys are going to have free lap races because there's going to be 500 guys.
I think you're right. This has been a long time coming, Brad. I mean, I think this has been a long time coming. We really needed a Grand National in Scotland. I think it should be a little bit rebranded as the Grand National of Scotland, irrespective. I think it's doing great things for Scottish motorcycle sport. It's a real privilege to have you here, to come over from the States. I can honestly say this hand in heart. There's guys out there that are in their 50s and 60s that you were their hero. Is that right, people?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe it. I think it was John Fleming I said to when they started promoting it as the Drumlanrig Grand National, and they said, guest of honour Brad Lackey. I said, you can't be serious, you haven't got Brad Lackey coming, and they had. It's absolutely amazing. I think we'll cut it out now, but if anybody wants to ask a question to Brad, could you shout it out now, please? Anybody got any questions for Brad?
Where did the
You're getting my good here.
Where did the design for the flames on the helmet come from?
Where did the designs for the flames on the helmet come from?
I had a French journalist, Philippe Cornu, I don't know if anybody knows him, but he was a kind of a fan of mine and a journalist. That's hard to do, you know, and you know what I'm saying. Right? Anyway, so he had a French painter guy, and he said, hey, the French painter guy, my friend, hey buddy, the French painter guy, you know, he wants to paint you a helmet. I said, okay, because what do you want? In '81 he painted me this blue white one. You know, I don't know if you guys have seen that picture. There's, you know, only a few pictures of that helmet. And then the second year I liked it, and you know, I had a different helmet, and the guy was a good painter, and he says, okay, he wants to do another one for '82. What do you want? I said, I always wanted a '57 Chevy with flames. Build me that helmet. I was joking because I figured the guy couldn't do it. He's a French guy, you know, he doesn't know about a '57 Chevy with flames. I got the helmet. I'm going, dude, nice. And I only wore that helmet in the GPs in each moto. I didn't even wear it in practice. I only wore it moto to moto for 24 motos.
Thank you for that.
Where is that helmet now?
It's sitting next to my real Suzuki. It's sitting at my house.
Any more questions, anybody?
Yes, why did they call him Bob Broad?
Why did they call you Bad Brad?
You know, it's another journalist thing. You don't know where they pick this stuff up, but I mean, Rolls-Royce, you get it, you know, but the Flying Fin, you get it. You know, I don't know. Garrett Wolfink, the dentist. Roger DeCoster, the man. Bad Brad, I don't know. I don't know. I think it, well, let me think. It could have something to do with '82 Finnish Grand Prix, where the shock was fading, and I took it back to Olean's, and I said, Kent, that's Ken Olean's, I said, the shock is fading. I'm not going to get points here. I am unhappy. And he said, Brad, it's been on the dyno a billion hours. It cannot fade. I said, well, Kent, I think you're wrong. So I threw the shock behind his truck and poured gas all over it, and then put a match on it. And then when it blew up and he was in the truck and he jumped out of his socks and turned around and flames were this high, he said, Kent, it's hot now.
This gentleman.
Of all the British Grand Prix that you raced over the years, Donington Park, Farley Castle, and I think you raced at Horton as well, didn't you? Yeah. Which was your favourite track and why?
Which was the favourite track in England?
Well, I think, like you said, Donington, Hawkthorne one time only. The 500 GP was mostly every time at Farley. And it was on the 4th of July every year, which is America's Independence Day. And I won that Grand Prix more than anybody. So that was my favorite.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? What did you think of Farley Castle?
Well, it's a beautiful grass track, just like here. You know, and somebody told me there's some step-ups over there in that part I haven't been to yet that's like Farley. And a grass track is a beautiful track. And it's, somebody told me it wasn't very wide, but I'm going, this is the widest track I've seen in a long time. But Farley, like I said, I won Farley 3 to 4 times on the GPs I was there, and I love that track, and this would be pretty much the same once it gets worked in. It'll be just like that.
There you go. Now, Brad, before we sort of wrap it up tonight, because obviously the guys want to do a little bit of beer drinking tonight, I believe you're going to have a couple of celebrational laps tomorrow, is that correct? Or Sunday? I'm not sure which day. Tell us about that.
I think after I got here and saw the track, I kind of got really nostalgic and went, oh, look at that. I kind of wanted to ride, and so I talked to Wooly, and they weren't planning it, but he thought it was a good idea. Sunday, maybe halfway between the motos or before the motos, I don't know when. That's their business, I don't know when that is. But if Graham shows up and Willie Simpson and maybe you know, all the other big guys that are here, I don't know who's here yet, just to go make one lap without our helmets on and, you know, just wave to the crowd in between the races or whatever, just to say hi to everybody and let everybody know we're here.
Great idea, everyone. So thank you very much. We'll see Brad out there on Sunday sometime. I'm sure Willie and the boys will make that happen and be accompanied by some of the great riders that we've got here at Drumlanrig this weekend. So, ladies and gentlemen, a great round of applause and a cheer for the guest of honour, Mr. Brad Lackey.